It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all volunteers, just like, you know, the Army Guard and the militia.
Uh-huh.
When I looked at the site, maybe I missed it, but I do think that a mention of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is such an important factor. It frees the regulars up, frees up the reserves, and the work that they were doing normally, you'll find the auxiliaries are out giving courses, boating safety, boarding vessels, they board, and doing what, you know, the Coast Guard, law enforcement, things of that nature. And they're of vital importance to the Coast Guard and part of the Coast Guard family. That's what. So I guess when that guy signed me up, he may have done me a favor.
Sounds like it.
Okay, you ready? Okay. This is an interview at the Westbury Public Library, Westbury, New York, the 10th of August, 2006, approximately 1 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yes, my name is Frank Bari, B-A-R-I. I was born in New York City, New York, born and raised on the Lower East Side in South Brooklyn. Even though they call it Carroll Gardens, it's still South Brooklyn to me.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I was a truant. I did not, I was not a very astute at my obligation of going to school. And I dropped out of school long before the legal age, but when I became 16, I dropped out. I went to work on because I lived near the waterfront in Brooklyn, and I started with someone else. I was a helper on a truck on the Brooklyn docks, where I learned a lot.
Okay.
I also, one other thing, I did sing, and people liked the way I sang, and I wound up in a few clubs. Even made a recording that went to number 100 in the Billboard charts around the country.
Oh, really? What?
Called "Loving You Right Out of My Mind," and I was in line to be with Roulette Records on a song called "Hey There, Lonely Girl." But the draft board sent me my card as they naturally would. I was prime for that, so I got to hear it over the, Hannah.
Okay, so you enlisted, or you were drafted?
I enlisted.
Enlisted, okay. And you ended up in the Coast Guard. When did you enlist?
It was the end of '69, towards the end of, I would say, in the fall of '69.
Where did you enter service?
Fort Hamilton. In New York, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they had just changed from Whitehall Street to MEPS over at Hamilton.
Okay, where did you go for your basic?
Cape May.
What was it like there?
Well, outside the base it was very nice.
How about the basic?
The basic was very physically and mentally tough. When I mean mentally tough, I don't mean crazy. I mean there were a lot of skills that I started to learn. Some things were familiar. For example, the ropes. very important. It had, the knots and everything of that nature. Because I had that when I was working in the docks on the truck. I was dealing with essentially skids of paper that are tons. Paper is very heavy. By the way, do you want me to look in the camera? Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Whatever. Okay, so the skid, tons of paper, and we would have to tie these up. And so I learned much better knots, with the Coast Guard. Unfortunately, I am very sad to say I don't remember them. You have to practice them pretty constantly, but I still know how to tie up a cleat, and I probably would come back to me if you put it in my hands. When I was on Title 10, 9 in the lug and not to jump, but I was called up, and I found that I was able to tie up the 41-footers, 44-footers, things of that nature, and it came natural, and it was correct. It was no problem.
How long was your training there at Cape May?
8 weeks.
Did you go on to a specialty school from there?
Yes, I did. Weapons. Training in Yorktown, Virginia.
Okay. What type of weapons?
Well, I have a little decal, and maybe I could find it, which I have right here on the floor. I have the schools that I went to.
Oh, okay.
Well, naturally, the M16 and small arms 45s. 45 was our small arms, and we had the M16, and we had our 5-inch. Those were specialty. You volunteered for that because those are on the high endurance cutters.
Okay.
And you got a briefing, although we did not throw hand grenades there. Or shoot or fire mortars or have any kind of mortar practice, but we did. We had classes on it. That came later. We went to Gitmo, and then in the Philippines in the Subic Bay before we pulled out. That's when we given instruction on throwing the hand grenade. And on the mortars, what we discovered, I came later in the Coast Guard's involvement. The Coast Guard's involvement actually came in 1965. Very quickly, as I showed a book to the gentleman, Paul Scotty wrote a book. Chief Warrant Officer Paul Scotty, retired. 33 years, U.S. Coast Guard, wrote a book about the entire U.S. Coast Guard operations in Vietnam, in all 4 corps, I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, and 4 Corps. And he was in Division 11 and I Corps on an 82-foot gun patrol boat, where he was a gunner's mate. I was striking for a gunner's mate. I then got orders from here to go to the Dallas, which was a high endurance cutter. You see, it says that's high endurance cutter, and we went over and I got all the rights of Neptunus Rex and my hand in the bowl, toilet bowl, and all of the things that they do.
No, that was when you crossed the equator?
The equator, yeah. And I didn't mind. It was fun. And that's when we pulled into Subic Bay. I was a decky. I was a seaman, first class, at that time. And, well, when I got to, I also went to Governor's Island for further training, because the Dallas was stationed in New York, as the Gallatin was at the time, because that's also another high-endurance cutter that we saw. They did not go to Vietnam. But this is just U.S. Coast Guard Training Center, Governor's Island, which recently was handed over to the Department of Parks. And the last, I mean, it was interesting, so I wrote a story in the local tri-state military paper, Harbor Watch, I wrote from Peter Stuyvesant, General Washington, to U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer Yarrow. He was the one person, just like the caretaker, until the takeover from the government, from the park departments, and that's always been military, even before the U.S. Was formed. Governor's Island was always a military base, and it was turned over by the Coast Guard, by a petty officer in the Coast Guard. Now, petty officers are equivalents to NCOI now.
Now, can I ask you a question about
Sure.
the Dallas? You call it a high endurance cutter. What do you mean by that?
It's 398, it's the largest ship in the Coast Guard. Largest cutter in the Coast Guard, excuse me. We call anything 65 feet and above is a cutter. We have, the icebreakers up in Alaska, the Polaris. I really don't remember the footage in that, but that's very large. And I know people who are on it, and I actually someone gave me, when they retired from there, the senior chief gave me a jacket, the ice-breaking jackets that they wear. They're orange, striped for the nighttime, and warm wherever you go. I mean, you could, out on the deck, you could move, you're insulated, because these guys are up there breaking ice up in the North Pole, South Pole. And they also do, at all times, all of our vessels and men are cross-trained. It's important because we're a small service. We're such a small service. I know that this is going to sound maybe somewhat maybe out of line, not out of line or off base, but in World War I, the U.S. Coast Guard's per percentage of men in the Coast Guard compared to the other services had the heaviest casualties in World War I of American forces. We were sunk, by the Germans several times, and we lost men, and we just don't have a lot of people. Usually we carry about 33. I believe the Commandant brought it up when I was in there until about 38,000. That includes, sometimes they include the reserves in there.
How large was the crew on the Dallas?
The Dallas, we had 110. When we reached Vietnam, after 2 weeks in Subic Bay, there was Phu Quoc Island, which is the entrance in the Gulf of Thailand. I don't have a map, but that's where it is, in the entrance of the Gulf of Thailand into if you go further, you go into the Mekong. And Phu Quoc was part of Vietnam, and Toi, where I was later stationed on an 82-footer. But they had us, when we arrived, it was in the evening, and then all hands sounded, and there were mortars lined up. Starboard side, please forgive me, but I believe starboard side. And the 5-inch was going like crazy, and we were just bombarding Phuoc. And you know, my job was, I was feeding the. We had a different mortar than the Army and the Marine Corps and the ground forces did, and so we popped it in, and that was my first experience in the evening. I saw the explosions, saw the light, didn't know anything until the following day, being a seaman first class, or a grunt if you want to say, they sent us ashore on to see what, if any, damage we did. And we were met by the 9th Infantry. The 9th Infantry was in Dongtan. There was the 60th of the 9th that I wound up working with a lot. There was the 48th of the 9th and infantry mostly. And they were there on the truck, and one NCO, I think he was an NCO, just yelled at me, just throw what you see into the trucks. And all I saw were pieces of bodies. I don't know who or what they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know they weren't American. And then we went further towards the mouth of the Mekong, and in there.
Okay, so I can ask you, do you know about the time frame of this?
Yeah, this is going into '69. We're around Christmas time of '69. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we got I heard it filtered down that there was a report that an ARVN unit was in trouble in Thailand, and that's the South Vietnamese Army.
Mm-hmm.
And our allies, and we went to their aid with NGS, Naval Gunfire Support. We were able to get them safe who we could on board safely, and that was an action. And we had our medics and corpsmen work on the ARVN soldiers who were some severely wounded, no legs, and etc. I never saw anything like that. Essentially, what I did at that point, my participation was carrying the shells to the gunners in the 5-inch, inside the 5-inch. I was just carrying shells. We were just in the line carrying shells to the cutter. I wish I had a photo of it. Then we did enter the Mekong, the mouth of the Mekong. It was very hard for us to do that, you know, because of the Mekong narrows and opens. And however, there was a village that there called Sonodok, SONGONCDOC, near the Umin forest, and that would be U-MINH, and that was a significant place for the Coast Guard, for spooks, for the the SEALs, and I would see everybody there. I would see HAL 3 come in. Like, as I told you, this photo that I have, and I had permission to go, was with HAL 3. I know it's hard to see me, I'm at the corner, but I showed it to you.
Hold that up again if you would.
Okay.
And that's you in the corner in the beret.
Correct. And that's a U.S. Naval Air Station at Bin Long.
Okay.
They, God bless every one of them, and the Black Ponies. I'll explain who they were, I'm sure you know. I wanted to strike for gunner's mate. My best way of doing so would be to get myself aboard an 82-footer. And I eventually did. And I was on Point Banks. Let's see, I might have a photo of that, I might not. But I do, but it's too small. This is kind of small. I'm going to use my glasses on this. But a good, maybe I could get it. This is an 82-footer. Right on Paul Scotty's book.
Okay.
If that, and they have, again, he has actions in here. I'm sorry. He has actions in here that we took place in. Here's about the village of Sonaduk, and you'll see, to quote, the Viet Cong came and went with little dread on the land cupped around the Gulf of Thailand until the HECs took roost there. Beneficiaries of their presence were isolated, friendly villages with their tiny forces of U.S. Army advisors, such as a place was Sonaduk, which one Coast Guardsman described as a village huddling nervously on the north bank of the river. And it was open to three sides of the enemy: the safety of the villages and half a dozen American soldiers. You had high endurance cutters. As a matter of fact, they mentioned Dallas. This is all in the Camau Peninsula, part of the Camau, C-A-M-A-U. That's the mid part to the lower part of the Mekong. And you would find, then we went further up. Okay, that was on the point, when I was on the Point Banks, on the 82-footer, we were able to go through the canals. The canals, sometimes there was no draft. I mean, we were bottoming out a lot. We could not turn around, and we were open for ambush. I know that, then came to there was the defoiling was going on, and it was very heavy in the rivers. By Admirals, was ordered by Admiral Zumwalt, who was very careful. I have his own son was Lieutenant J.G. and was a river rat and passed away at 38 from dioxin poisoning. And there's a book that they wrote, My Father, My Son. Mm-hmm. And they took it off the shelves because guys were trying to service connect it, but I have the audio books, how they audio it, and I have the audio of it, and it's very moving, and Admiral Zumwalt did everything he could. They lied to him. They told him, he asked about the effect on human beings. This was very clear. His own son is passed away from this, and he was very concerned about the men, and I admired him, and also a commandant. He was then Commander Yost. I'm jumping around a lot. If you want to
That's all right.
It's okay. I remember I was going to tell you how the Coast Guard got involved. Did you want me to go back to that, or?
Sure.
Okay. In 1965, the Army had surveillance planes flying along the coast, down around the Mekong into the Three Corps, and they noticed two islands, or what appeared to be islands, moving rapidly. And they reported this and were given permission to fire. It was then discovered that, as you know, Vietnam really didn't have many highways. You had, Highway 1, and there was no way down in the Delta. And the Delta was very rich in rice. A lot of people don't know it, but the bananas were tremendous. They had wonderful, they grew bananas down there too, but the rice was very important to the North Vietnamese, and I think to the rest of Southeast Asia. It was very, at any rate, what happened is the Army discovered in 1965, we got a problem. They're coming down the canals, they're coming down into the Delta, they're supplying and beefing up the villages, they're using psyops on the villages. How are we going to approach this? Now the only way we're going to, it's water, so naturally they called the Navy, and the Navy said, can't send a battleship down a canal, can't send an aircraft carrier down a canal, so somebody probably said, let's go get the Coast Guard. We do interdiction. We're the one who do interdiction. We do boardings, because as a matter of fact, a lot of people may not know this also, which I learned about the Coast Guard, that a lot of Navy ships you'll find coasties on. The reason is when there's blockades, a Coast Guardsman does the boardings. The reason is if the DOD, if a sailor, a Navy sailor or a Marine or whatever, a Navy sailor does boarding, he's under the DOD. The Coast Guard is under the Secretary of the Navy while he's under the Secretary of the Navy, and they feel like it. But when he goes to make the boarding, he's law enforcement. He's now will be Homeland Security. So that's not an act of war. If the sailor boarded, the American Navy boarded, that's an act of war. Whereas the Coast Guard changes hats. So that's just one thing. Getting back, they said, look, they're experts in the interdiction. They have the small boat knowledge. They know how to, they know how to do the canals. So they sent word to the Coast Guard, and they ordered. It's in Scotty's book. They asked for a squadron, I believe, and he has how each squadron was deployed, when, where, how, from where, and whatever. The men in the 82-footers, unlike the high endurance cutters or medium endurance cutters, they were flown over. They were into Clark or Townsend or something like that. Probably into Clark, because that's where they joined up with their 82-footers and they gave them their names. So that's how the Coast Guard got involved in Vietnam. But again, it's U.S. Navy Task Force 115. That was the U.S. Coast Guard. It later went into 116 when they developed these swift boats. Unfortunately, which was a great boat. Unfortunately, I think you may know, the man who developed it passed away before he could see how successful swift boat he made for the Navy, the PBRs. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we worked with them. We had ops with them. We had ops with many naval vessels. We had ops with SEALs. We had insertions. Well, it's a long time. And we inserted men in Cambodia. SEALs. We worked a lot, again with the 60th of the 9th, I remember very well, 9th Infantry, whose main base was Dongtan. But they were regular draftees, infantrymen, and we would bring them to their point of where they had to impart, and we would supply them with NGS. We wouldn't leave them. We weren't far from them. A lot of them needed. There was a time I remember a very good friend of mine from the 9th. Drank a lot naturally, and we dropped off they were going to do I forgot the name of it, operations something. It was an army operation, but we dropped them off, and the VC, they were in the what did you call it? Give me the word. The elephant grass, and as they're coming through the patties, they just started hitting them, and my friend was injured, I could see, and I ran out to him, but there was nothing I could do, that was that. But and we did that. We did a lot of insertion, but we would never leave. I'm sorry, yeah.
Could I ask you about those crafts? What was the size of the crew on them?
We had 12.
And what was your armament?
Oh, we were armed to the teeth. I'm glad you brought that up. Coast Guard Gunners Mate developed, and you might be interested in this. There are photos in here about it. Developed a combination of M50 and the 81mm mortar on top of the M50. So we had that forward, aft, and on the aft, and on our port side we had, and starboard, of course, we had the 50 calibers, and also forward we had, I think, 23s. We had 50s. We had the 50, and we had the M60s that 2 men would always handle, and everybody had the M16 and 45s. When you boarded a vessel, it was the first time I did it, it was your adrenaline was going. Now I realize I was scared to death. I guess 37 years I realized I was scared to death, but my adrenaline was high, and I think it was dangerous not only to myself, but to, if it was an innocent Vietnamese fisherman, it was dangerous to him as well, because I was ready to just pull and just forget about it, yeah, but I went on. They would put 2 of us on, and they would cover us with the 50 cal. And what I learned to do from a more experienced man, is they had vats, and I'd make sure that they were rice or fish. And what we would do is we would make the fisherman, so-called fisherman, put his hands in there, go all the way in, open it up, go all the way in, and go in there to make sure that, in fact, it was fish or whatever, or rice, or whatever kind of vegetables sometimes they would have, because they would have markets. They would have, on the rivers there were small villas, and they would actually sell on the river. I mean, the traffic in the river was like the traffic in the LIE, if somebody could imagine that, you know, at rush hour on the Long Island Expressway. It really was something. So we would sometimes get information from a Chuhoi, a Kit Carson scout. I'll explain what that is very quickly. I know you know. That's really a Viet Cong or North Vietnamese. Essentially, it's a Viet Cong who comes over in the daytime, and he fattens up on American food and works with us as an interpreter and things of that nature, and helps kind of guide us under the guise that he's being repatriated more into the American, our side, when in fact we knew they were VC. And there was one time that we had well, I call them Chuhois, others Kit Carson, but we had our Kit Carson scout and we had an academy guy who, you know, they only stayed for like 4 months. Now it has to be 6 months, you know, so for their political thing, so they could get there. I don't know what rank you are, I'm not trying to, you know, but so they could say they were in combat. He's going down, he wanted to go down a canal, and we looked at, you know, we saw it, we knew the canal, and that was heavily used. I mean, we couldn't turn around. There was no defoliant. I could not see this gentleman if I went down that canal. Okay, so if I was a Viet Cong and he was on the patrol boat, he's dead. And what happened is the Kit Carson scouts started going, no, he's screaming, no, and he pushed me off the boat. He liked me. I mean, I wasn't going to be, he was a human being, he was nice, you know. He didn't try to kill me then, so later at night he tried to kill me. So I figured, so he jumped into the water. 3 other guys jumped in with us. And this guy, he put us, you know, put us in a report, da-da-da-da-da. But then the chief, usually you had a chief, they like to have a senior chief or master chief running these 82-footers, because they knew really how to handle it and what to do. And but when the guys were coming out of the academy, they would give them a command so they could have combat experience on their record. But we jumped out of that pretty quick. We also had our techniques. I'm not going to say we, you know, I'm telling you about some things. I'll give a little bit of some of the things that we used to do. On our 82-footers, one of our favorites worked quite well. And sometimes the Chuhois were accurate. And they would give us some information, or our intelligence would give us information that there was going to be a crossing somewhere, okay? Somewhere, some canal, somewhere in Mekong, some one of the rivers, one of them, the Soyrap. Well, that's further up by you, but we were, I'm sorry, when I said by you, I'm speaking to somebody who was up in Wait for By in I-Corps. Can't see in the camera, but at any rate, what we would do, we would take 2 82-footers, and we would run that motor red. I mean, the wakes that we would just. It sounded like a bomb coming up the river. You know, we were really revving it up. And what happened is that slowly, the boat of choice, and I was on a boat of choice several times, would start calming down. We'd start cooling down. And we had a spot where we could hide on the side, whether it be whatever bank of the canal or river, and we hid. And you couldn't hear it because there was so much noise. The other one was still revved up, and the wakes are all over that, you know, and they're not exactly sticking their head out. They may be looking through some elephant grass, but they're not going to see us because it's thick still where we are, so we're well hidden. And we caught, we did catch Viet Cong bringing supplies and crossing lower points of the rivers and the canals, and we had heavy USV about the power, you know, about we had a lot. Oh, the M79, we had about 3 of them. The grenade launcher, that's the grenade launcher. So we were able to just hit, and we hit. We had the mortars, and we had like 4 M50s, 4 or 5 M50s going. Yeah, 2 M60s. You know, so we had heavy firepower, and we would take them out. And that was a tactic that we used often, successfully. I'm surprised I never learned about it. And the Kit Carsons didn't know. I mean, they weren't with us. We didn't bring them along with us, the Chihuahuas. They didn't know. Mm-hmm. They would just say, oh, going to be a lot of ammunition flowing in, this and that. And we would try to figure out, and we would try to guess which would be the best spot. Where have they crossed before? Where have we gotten some intelligence before that they crossed? Where have, you know, and the SEALs were very helpful. They would, you know, they found trails and things like that. So we would wait there. I mean, and we were 3 days on, 3 days off. And no, I didn't know Senator Kerry. I could tell you that I believe we did an excellent job. And I'm proud of the job that we did on the 82 footers. I think, as a matter of fact, we received a naval citation for it. We did help the people in the villages. There was a cholera epidemic that broke out at Sonodok, and the Campbell came, the Coast Guard cutter. That's another high endurance cutter came, and they had doctors, and they treated all the children, everything, the people. So we also did our humanitarian role as well, and that's an important thing because that's part of our missions. We have many missions, and I learned that being a Coast Guardsman I did 6 years active, and 1985 till 9/11 I was active. I was in the reserves, so I learned a lot about that. Now the big thing with us was search and rescue. Now I'll go up to Da Nang. 37th Aerospace Rescue Recovery Squadron, under the Air Force wing, had an exchange program with U.S. Coast Guard pilots for search and rescue. This is on the internet. You could look it up, and of course it's in the book. Lieutenant Jack Ritchier was a pilot. I'm not good at his name, but I believe it's Rittchier. And this was when the exchange program started. He was there for about 4 months. They were in Laos. A Marine Corps captain was shot down. Lieutenant Jack Ritchier and his Coast Guard crew, which was an exchange program on the 37th, took off for the SAR, and there were 2 other Jolly Greens. And what happened is that the Marine on the ground signaled. He said it's a trap, and they shot the 2 Jolly Greens down. And Lieutenant Richier saw where the NVA, now we're talking regular, North Vietnamese regular, not Viet Cong, North Vietnamese regulars were. He saw the flashes and everything, and he knew it was a trap, and there were others coming that he was trying to wave off of to save the captain. And at this point, there's a guess at what he did, but it's surmised and it's in the book, and the internet probably also tells the story correctly. He came from Cleveland, and they had a big thing about Cleveland. They just discovered his body. He was an MIA for all these years. Although they knew where he was in Laos. Mm-hmm. And so what happened is it had to be a joint decision by the crew and himself, but he somehow got over the entire NVA. They were taking hits from the ground. He was getting hit. So either the chopper was going to go down, but from what they can ascertain, he turned it off and just dropped the chopper on top of it on the NVA unit. And he won from the Air Force the Silver Star, also the Distinguished Flying Cross from the U.S. Air Force. And the Coast Guard exchange continued with the Air Force. The Air Force pilots saw our pilots who come stateside, and we would send our pilots over to Da Nang in the 37th, some in the 38th as well. And that was a major action. They found his body about 4 years ago, and it was very big. He won the Silver Star in that, and the Distinguished Flying Cross. Again, it's anybody's guess. He was taking fire from the ground. Maybe he knew he was going to go down, and but they know that the chopper was shut off, and that was it. We don't know. I don't know what happened to the captain of the Marine airplane. But getting back to my experiences in the 82 footers, a lot of boardings, and I became, naturally. Then I was no longer the FNG. You don't want me to say what that is. Okay. I know you know what it is, but you don't want me in this, do you? No. Okay. I was no longer an FNG, and I would even jump from I would jump while we were coming alongside, and which would surprise them a little bit, because at this point I had my M16 backwards, on my back. I carried, and I had my 45 out, and I was able to say, "Hey, Didima," I won't explain. You know what it means. And I had them do the same things. I had them go into anything that was closed. I had them open. If they wouldn't open it, I'd shoot. I'd use my 45 and I'd just shoot at it. And then I look at the guy, and if there was any kind of expression, I'd shoot him too. It was my life. I didn't know what he had. Mm-hmm. There was someone one time. There's a Coastie who saved my life, and he was standing on the 50, and I was looking at something I didn't like on the vessel, on the fishing vessel I was on, and what happened is I turned away from the fishermen who were in the boat, and one took out a blade and started charging me. I didn't see this, and the guy screaming, "Frank, Frank, Frank, Frank," and he didn't want to open up because he had the 50 cal and he could have hit me. So I turned around and I had my 45 E-5, so that was that. And then I just jumped aboard and they did what they had to do with their 50s, the guys on the 82-footers. But then there was a time, one insertion I remember we did with the Navy SEALs. Believe it was SEAL Team 5. Fellow, I remember him, Derek Carpenter. Very buku dinky dow. And that I could say, he was very crazy. As a matter of fact, Hanoi Hannah had a reward out for him. He made his own card, but everybody made cards. You know, they made cards done by the 9th Division, killed by the 9th. No, he put his home address, his name, his unit, and he had his home address, his wife's name, his kid's name, his father's name, and he put this whole thing, and when he did the job, he left it there. Anyway, she put money in his head, and yeah, he was laughing. And what happened is we dropped off. We inserted 8 into Cambodia, and you know, you just heard a lot of fire, and I don't see anything. It's too thick. It was just too thick. And then I do catch one of the SEALs running back to us. So I take the 50 and I'm shooting over their heads. You know, I'm just so that whatever, I don't want to hit anybody, any SEAL coming toward our way, any friendlies coming our way. So it's just that whoever's in back chasing, because these guys are running, knows that there's something in back of these guys. And we sent out mortars. You know, the mortar guy, he was very good. He had the range, and we sent it out further and further. And out of the 8, there were 3 who were coming, and I saw Derek, and he was dragging 2 Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and he came on board. And we did it out of there. We shoved out of there. They came, and you know, we were just firing, and we really hightailed it out of there. Long story short, when we got back to Antoi, which was our main base, Derek Carpenter, he took the 2 VC, and he, if you don't want me to talk about this,
No,
I'll
that's
stop.
fine. That's fine.
Okay, he cut their ears, and he said, "These are yours, Frank." I said, "No, they're not mine." I understood what it's about. I was there long enough. I said, "I didn't kill these men." He said, "But I never would have gotten back if you didn't open up. So they're yours. They would never have come back. So there you go." So he cut the ears from both guys, left it out in the sun, and made me an ear necklace. Snapped a picture. I sent it home to my mother. She doesn't think I'm so well, but I never found that picture again. But he did that. That was an incident I remember. There was a lot of, we were very careful with the women. We were taught to be careful with the women. There was one place where the mama san was cool, even though she had beetles, you know. Took me a long time to wipe it off, but anyway, they were cool. They had a thing for us and Charlie, and they would put it up. They would put a flag up for Charlie, flag up for us. And some of the girls were good looking, and they were nice. They were also coming in base and cleaning for the, you know, they do the cleaning in Mama San, so make our beds, do our sheets. They'd make outlines at the base so they know where, so they could give it to the enemy, and they had a good outline of where we were. We moved our 82 footers all the time after they were gone. We would move things around. We would move different things in the base around. And
Now at your base, what kind of quarters did you live in?
okay, when I wasn't on board the 82 footer, I lived in a hooch. I lived in a regular hooch.
Okay. Now on ship, on your boat.
Oh,
what
that's
did you
something
live in
a
there?
rack.
Rack.
Oh, I had a rack.
Okay. No, I was just wondering both. Wanted you to tell us about both. How about if you were out a couple days on your 82 footers, what kind of food, sea rations, so on?
Actually, I'm just gonna look at it. We had good food.
Okay.
We had a very good cook, and he did a lot with what he had. And the sea rations came when we were on land. I did like beans and motherfuckers a lot, so I took them with me sometimes, and he boiled them for me, and he made hero sandwiches for me out of it. I didn't mind it. It wasn't so terrible. You get used to it, And I did get accustomed to drinking only warm beer. I don't drink anymore because I'm ill. I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which a VA service rep is trying to service connect, along with diabetes too, which is a service connection, along with PTSD, because I do have problems. But I didn't mind the food. On the 82 footer, it was good. In the hooch, we had problems with the rats. The best way to get rid of a rat is that the rats the guys would burn them. You'd kill one, and then they became sadistic, and they, just tortured it. So they kill it and then they burn it, and the smell would keep all the rats away. And it wasn't very apt, we weren't in the mood to eat too much. On the 82 footers, we kept the soda. He kept it cool, because we had some refrigeration there too. So we were able to have a cold Coca-Cola. I wouldn't take it. The kids would all come around, Coke. No way. I wasn't going to drink glass at the end of the bottle. I did listen to when we came in, I listened to about the culture and the things like that, and guys who knew. You learn from the guys who know. I think a smart CO, smart officer, turn to the guy who's been there the longest and say, listen, I've got rank, I'd like you to respect it, but I'm going to respect you because I haven't been out here like as long as you. And I happen to have known a lieutenant who did that, and people did everything to save this guy. No, he's okay. He was okay, but we were sad to see him go. And very smart, individual. He said, "I will listen. Just respect my rank." Fine. I thought that was good. Food, better, of course, than the 82 footer. The other thing wasn't very appetizing, and we did have the sea rats, but I didn't mind it. It was. Because I liked hot dogs, I like beans, and so it's hot. It's only 115 degrees, 110 degrees out, That's another thing, we were taking a lot of chances. We were very much in the open They have shots of that in here somewhere. We were very much in the open. We wouldn't, the flak jackets even out was very hot, very warm. Wouldn't wear, you know, the helmets, so we started taking them off, and we would just there with the, you know, bare shirts or a t-shirt or anything. You know, we tie something around the head. But other than that, after a while, you know, we.
Yes, sir.
No.
No, he can zoom in on it. So the 82 footer and then the sand pans, the way that's what they boarded. Were you ever wounded or do you have any illnesses while you were there?
Yes.
Okay.
They told me I had.
They can go down.
Okay, got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had. They told me I had dengue fever, which I understand is very akin to malaria. So I did have that, but it didn't stop. I wasn't hospitalized. They just gave me pills and I kept on taking them. A lot of us for a long time, you know, you had the runs. I'm not again trying to be dirty.
No,
if you have,
this is reality.
you know, sometimes it gets very scary, especially when you're doing a night patrol. And you have to remember, you know, at that time there's no lights, as you know, out in the rivers, and you don't know what's coming your way. And you know, we have motors. They had sampan. They were quiet. They also had sappers that could swim like our SEALs. They had sappers, and what the sappers, now these were not terrorists, you know, looking to blow themselves up. They would attach some C4, and then they'd move out of there and they'd set it off. So we had all of us, but we would make one man every hour, because you can't have somebody standing there for, like, you know, a day looking just in the. But we were all looking out for sappers. They were excellent swimmers. It's hard to see if we went into especially when we were moving. When we were moving and the wake and everything, they were right at the bottom, and they'll come up right under, and they would slap on a C4, and boom, you know. But they get out of there. Again, they were not suicidal like the enemy that unfortunately we're facing today.
What were relationships like within your unit? Were the guys real close?
Yeah, very close.
Do you have any,
As a matter of fact, I have a buddy letter that I needed.
did you, how were race relations?
Not a problem, let me tell you. Not a problem at all. There were, you know, black, white, Asians with us. America is a land of immigrants, and there was nothing. Let me tell you, if I could go out into the field when we dropped the night, and they got hit bad. This was in a book somewhere. Somebody told me. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. There were so many incidences. I jumped out. You don't see color. When those bullets, when you're in a firefight, you don't see colors. You don't see anything. You know, you're backing that guy up. he's backing you up, and you're backing him up, and he's your brother. And that's it. I did not have any, nor did I, the racial slurs that I heard from the blacks themselves. You know, they still do that, you know, but I think, you know, that jokingly, like, okay, I'm Italian, so I say, hey, Guinea from Brooklyn, get over here, you know. And I'm sorry, you know, but you know, they would say things like that, and it was not meant in any way, shape, or form. We were one. We were one fist, and we were all determined to get out. And we have, and our association. I want this. You could also find this on the web. Tells a lot. There's a lot of stories on it. Besides,
Getting a little glare. If you can just tilt that towards me a little. That's perfect, right? No, that's pretty good.
Are there any persons
Okay.
that stand out more than others with the guys you were with?
yes.
You drop that.
And I didn't know it at the time. It's very interesting. In service connecting, I mentioned that I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and other problems that my service representative is working on from, he's a member of Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 82, as I am. And we have to have a buddy letter. And as a matter of fact, I have a buddy letter. I think I have it here.
So how long were you over in Vietnam?
The answer was all fucking day, but to tell you the truth, it was about 14 months. Because after the 82 footer, they slid me over to the Morgenthau. The Morgenthau was a high endurance cutter. And then what happened, which was heartbreaking during, well, do you want me to go back to the buddy thing and then I'll go into
yes,
this?
yes.
What was the oncology? Let me see. Where is it? All right, you have to have, there are two things that you have to have service connection, especially when you have, my kind of disease, which is a killer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I have a very rare form called mantle cell. And the doctor's writing a thing about it. He doesn't know why I'm alive in '99. Sloan Kettering, I went there. They told me, we won't treat you. But, whatever. I mean, you know, when I learned what it was from and where it came from, because I actually have the biopsy sitting right in front of me because I was at the VA yesterday. And it was chemically induced, according to the pathologist. And they mention that. They don't come out and say Agent Orange, dioxin, 1971, 1970, but it was chemically induced. This is chemically induced, 90%. But non-Hodgkin's lymphoma happens to be the #1 cancer. As you know, the VA doesn't recognize every cancer. And I have had some fellows contact me who have different cancers that are not recognized. And now they're trying to reevaluate, I don't know if you know this, but the VA is trying to reevaluate all veterans. And there's a very good organization out there. Can't forget them, and I'm sorry I don't have their insignia, which was, okay, Mobile Riverine, mrfa.charter.net. That's the Mobile Riverine Forces enlisted men who fought on the rivers. You had to be a river rat. In other words, if you were if you weren't just on board ship, for example, my service rep was on the USS Boston. He spent most of his time no lower than the DMZ, and most of the time up in North Vietnam, bombing, hitting them. And he's not qualified for the MRFA. These are only mobile riverine forces. If you were in country and you were on the rivers and the canals and you fought on the rivers and canals, this organization, and they're right on top of things and they're fighting things. Right now, the VA is attempting to reevaluate veterans. My father, who is a retired Army colonel, and I told you Merrill's Marauder, and he's volunteered for every war, including Afghanistan, in his 90s. He said, get the 10th Infantry, the Mountain Division out of there, get me the Gurkhas out of India, and I'll go in and I'll get who you want. But he turned around and he just got a big package. A big package. They're trying to reevaluate the veterans and making the things for PTSD, trying to make it out, well, does it really exist? Is it real? And let me tell you, from someone who suffers from it, and it's real. And it hits later. I mean, it's hard for people who have never experienced it to think how something 37 years ago could come back and harm you and disable you. But it does. It could be something very simple. It could be, you could be gassing up your car. The reason for that is it has an odor of napalm, also the shit burners. We had that, the base had that. When they don't have any sewage system in Vietnam, and I guess somebody else must have gone over this, so they know about the shit burners, people. It was gasoline, and you burn it, and it smells. It could be a song. I can't tell you how many times I have walked down the street and a person would walk by me and the face would be familiar. And it would strike something so deep that I didn't know that I had inside me. I told you you asked me at the very beginning about my schooling, and you know I'm an attorney. I happen to be admitted in 3 states. What happened is, I was drunk when I was out of service. I spent most of the 70s in a Scotch mist. I worked the docks and the trucks, and my mother and grandmother, from the old school, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, and professional. So I'm a bum. I'm a gangster. I said, but Mom, look at the money I make. Look. And they hit me with the broom and they chased me out. So I wanted to prove that I could do it. Now, I was making money as, working on the trucks and the piers and all of that. And I hired there's no statute of limitations in this, okay? When I was younger, the way I learned my mathematics, I was running for a bookmaker. My mother used to walk me in one end of the elementary school. I'd go out the back and he was there, and we'd go, and he'd send me in. And then he would taught me how to add and multiply, and that's how I learned my mathematics. But what happened is I knew the GED would be a lot harder. So I came home, I opened up the book, and I picked a tutor for everything. And I sat him down, he came. Turned out, this was 1979, late 1979. And it turned out that this guy was like half a genius. He was a professor at a college, Queens College, and he spoke 7 languages. He had a doctor from NYU in mathematics, and I told him my problem, and he said, let's work. And he would come 4 nights a week, and I registered for my GED, and I walked in and I passed it, and I showed it to my mother. She said, you're still no good. Why? Well, Donnie and this guy didn't have to go to Vietnam. They went to college, and they got a master's degree, this that. So I had enough money, and I had kind of I was into the business. I had 3 trucks with a partner, and I started going to St. John's, and I finished in 3
years. Did you GI Bill for that?
No, I didn't. I refused to admit I was a veteran. I refused until 1986. I never admitted that I was a veteran. I had one experience when I came home. My sister tried to set me up, who's an oncologist in Florida. She's also a professor. She has a doctorate in French and Spanish. She studied over in Europe. She was kept away from the kind of milieu that I was surrounded in, and very brilliant and very smart. And at any rate, I forgot your question. I'm sorry.
Did you use the GI Bill at all? You said
no.
Okay.
Well, what happened is this: when I came home, I kept my head, even though I was drinking. I kept myself kind of military, even though I wasn't wearing I wasn't walking around in a uniform. My hair was very short. I mean, if you saw me, you may think I'm on leave, you know. Mm-hmm. And she fixed me up with a girl. And I took the girl out. I took her out. Evidently, my sister had told her a little bit, she wanted to know about me. I understand that. So I guess my sister told her that I had just come home from Vietnam. And I took her out for dinner at a steak lobster place. And I ordered this, steak, and when I picked up the knife, she started screaming. And I was very embarrassed. And she says, I can't do this, I can't do this, I'm sorry, I just can't do this. And she pushed, she says, please don't hurt me. And I said, I'm not hurting anybody, I'm just cutting my steak, and I had to explain to the waiters, ma'am, you want us to call the police? And she said, no, he didn't do it, he didn't come after me, no. And so I said to call my sister, I said, what are you doing to me? Well, you did come home from Vietnam, and we're against all of this. You're in the campus, you came to meet me in a campus. I said, yeah, and I felt very uncomfortable. I didn't say what I was, but I was very uncomfortable. And I wanted to hurt somebody. Well, I wanted to kill somebody. And I didn't. I controlled myself. And after that, I just kept it to myself. And I made enough money in the docks with my contacts, and I was able to pay my way through. And they were legit. I mean, I had 3 trucks. I had a gypsy going over the road. Yes, I did it through connections. In other words, if you were waiting at Pier 5 in Brooklyn, my truck is going to get unloaded before you. Okay? And I wouldn't, if you beefed about it, they just tell you, they wouldn't answer you. If you beefed about it twice, you wouldn't be unloaded. So what happened is I just, I had the money for that and it paid my way. And then I found a priest who, I knew he was a booster when he was a kid. You know what a booster is? He was a thief. He was, and he was a priest. Right now he's a Monsignor. And I used to have fun with him, and I used to leave Playboy in there, all this. My friend of mine put out Screw Magazine. Al Goldstein was not Screw Magazine. That was in back of him. And my friend who really put it out, who distributed it, I'd always go see him, and I put it in, and there he is, and all of it, was in his office, and I left the things on his table, and all the nuns are coming in and everything. He grabbed me. He just knew it was me. He found where I was, and he grabbed me out of the classroom by the throat. I said, hey, come on, in the old days, he came from Williamsburg. I knew him from the Peters. Anyway, and he had done the tournament too, with the Army. Drafted, and he was with the Army. Not as a regular guy. He came back and he went to the seminary. So I paid my way through, and I finished, and what he did for me, he did me a favor. He allowed me to take extra credits in the summer. You're allowed to take extra credits in the summer, but he allowed me to take 3 more each time. So that will be an extra 6. I can't remember, I think you're allowed to take 9, and he would allow me to go over that, and I would take it at night. It, counts. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did the work. So I graduated in 3.5 years. I had a 3.3, and then I went on, something happened to some friends of mine, and I didn't like it, and I went to law school, and I became a criminal defense lawyer. I was a legal aid attorney in Brooklyn. I was a public defender in Newark, New Jersey, and I've done RICO cases. I was a Chinese gang expert. As a matter of fact, Maxim wrote me up as a Chinese. They interviewed me as a Chinese gang expert, because I would just walk in to, they would come to me, and I would win most of their cases when I could. The problem was the Vietnamese, the Amerasians. David Tai, who was Born to Kill, there's a book out, BTK. No, not in the book, but David Tai started that. He tried to keep it legitimately. These kids had nowhere to go. And a lot of them would ask me, could you find my father? Can you find my father? Can you find my father? And there is a locator, and there is certain ways through, they had pictures, the mothers would have pictures or something like that. Would try to read the unit or whatever, and I handed them over. Vietnam Veterans of America has an organization that tries to find the father. Mm-hmm. And even if these kids were like gang members in the street, but I tried to help them in that way, but not as a gang member, but to try to find their thing. Mm-hmm. Now, when they did something, bad things, I walked right in. This is what they like. Into the back. This is on Canal Street in New York. He had a restaurant, David Tai, Po. You know Po. The soup. Mm-hmm. It's very good. Baxter Street too, very good. The Trang restaurant on Baxter Street. Good Po, they know. Good. You tell them Fei Jai. Okay, tell them all. They also call me the White Buddha. And the Nuke Mom's great. And I went to David Tai. I said, listen, you guys are looking for trouble. There was an incident in a Ghost Shadow. That's a gang in Chinatown, an old-time gang, that's controlled by Tongs. The only Tongs, do you know what Tongs are? And these guys go all over. You'd be surprised how a 14-year-old kid could reach into China, right through his Dilo, which is a street boss. And I started to look, well, without getting, this is not about China and the Chinese gangs, but I was considered an expert in it. And I calmed things down as much as I could, but I tried to, but I couldn't. They were just shooting it up, and they had nothing else to do. There was nothing for them out there. I mean, it's very nice that we take the examinations, but I like to, I don't know, maybe I have a kid out there. I don't know. I was also in Korea with Port Security Unit 305. We helped the Korean Coast Guard in Busan because we all know that nothing's going to happen at the 37th Panmunjom. They're going to try. They're going to try to come up, through the water, and then the two sides. So the Korean Coast Guard and Navy is very vigilant, and every 2 years we do work with them. I did it once, and I married a Korean girl, and I have a beautiful daughter. That's why I go for treatment. Or when Sloan Kettering told me, forget it, have a good time for 4 months maybe, I consulted, although I wanted to throw the guy out of the window, I consulted another, got another opinion. And because I want to be here as long as I can for my daughter. And sometimes, believe it or not, there are innocent people who do get convicted. I know a young man doing 60 years to life on a triple homicide that he didn't do. But I can't say a word because the guy who did the homicide was my client, and attorney-client privilege says it goes to the grave.
Mm-hmm.
This was a Supreme Court ruling. And I sit with that. Those are some of the things I sit with. But on the Coast Guard in Vietnam, we were, very important, our reservists. They screamed at the Army. In Saigon, at Port of Saigon, Port of Da Nang, when you're loading and unloading the ammo, they found guys smoking. And they were like, whoa! And the commander just blew up at a colonel. And bottom line is, we then worked, and they were wearing, it said Coast Guard, but it was Army uniforms. Mm-hmm. And they worked, the Coast Guard worked with the loading and unloading of our supplies, our munitions in the Port of Saigon, Port of Da Nang. And that was the Coast Guard. And the Army, were teaching the Army how to handle that properly. That's something that we do. That is something we do even in peacetime, munitions and things of that nature, and handling that. And this was a reserve unit. They would come over for months, and another reserve unit from another place that handles that. Usually port security units do that. Mm-hmm. And so they have us interfacing with our sister services and a lot of other people getting credit. It's not the medal don't mean anything. I told you I was in 9/11. I was 5 blocks away from 9/11 when it happened, and I stayed on active duty on a Title 10 prep for 2 years. And a lot of people don't know, but I brought in a lot of media. The Coast Guard was the first military on scene. We secured the place. We had the cutters under the bridge. The Tamaroa, which is a medium endurance cutter, came under the Throgs Neck Bridge and stood there. If you ever drove I don't know if during the time, if you know the area or what, you drive the Bell Parkway, you saw that Coast Guard cutter under there, weapons up, ready. You saw helicopters. We did the first flyover. Our chopper units were there. Our 41-footers were out there. Our icebreakers were out there. Because we serve, as I say, we serve many missions. Our icebreaker could very easily turn into a very dangerous vessel. You stick on 50 calibers and you stick on your stuff and boom. And our choppers, we got our 50 calibers. So we were over there, and under the Washington Bridge was a Cutter Spencer, World War II vessel. We kept it in shape. The Coast Guard keeps their ships in tip-top shape, and the Spencer was under there. And it took about, my job was media relations, and because everybody wanted to get down there. And what happened, I was taking foreign crews, Japan, Korea, and I would be walking the streets, and it was like the Twilight Zone, not like Nam or anything like that, but it was like the Twilight Zone. And then maybe about a week later, I saw the 69th setting up a mortar thing with sandbags. I have no idea why they were setting up the mortars. I said hello and how you doing, and I walked by and brought the reporters to where I had to. I went through Benjamin Harrison, DINFO's Defense Information School. It's now at Fort Meade, and that was that. I didn't understand, but a lot of people don't know. And the Coast Guard also organized and this is documented. All the tugboats in the harbor, everything in the harbor, they were in charge of getting 1 million people off that island. And I mean, God bless our troops in Iraq. We're over there too. I had a friend who was, and we followed out. I was sent to the Bainbridge Island because I'm a small boat sailor. That's the 110-foot island cutter. Okay, being that it's over 65 feet. It's an island cutter, not as good a fighter as the 82-footer, but a fighter nonetheless. And we had to take, there was a real threat in the Iwo Jima, the Navy amphibious marine assault carrier. And we took them out 200 miles. Now, I was kind of happy, I'll tell you what. I still have my sea legs, but it hurts at this age a little bit. We did that, and we were over in the Gulf, we were in the Southwest Asian area, and our thing in Iraq and over there was to make sure that you didn't have some guy in some small little boat tied up with dynamite blowing a hole like they did with the Cole, USS Cole. And I guarantee had a U.S. small boat sailors like the 110-footers or the 82-footers that we had. I'll even go as far as our 41-footers because we'll put anything on there, and you wouldn't have had that happen. And the orders were to stop them, and they were heavily armed before they hit, the Navy, or crash them. They came close, and a friend of mine it was burns, third-degree burns, almost died. He was in the hospital in Germany for 6 months. He's home, thank God, with a little child, 2 little children now. And I guess that the other, if you want to know, there's a lot of stories.
Mm-hmm. Why don't I just finish it with, how do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life? changed your life or had an effect?
It changed my life permanently. It changed my life permanently in that, well, first of all, I grew up with I did grow up with military in the family, and very strict. When I mean strict, I mean militarily strict. I don't mean somebody who would, abuse, Well, my shoes had I couldn't use I had to, but the thing was, okay, I think it's made me, extremely,
Couple minutes.
extremely, I'm sad, I'm depressed a lot. Came on later in life, but there seems to be a perseverance that I've noticed. I mean, if I check where I started from and where I am now, and believe me, I'm not talking about money. I had much more money when I was a tough kid in Brooklyn. Statute of limitations, you can't do nothing about it, FBI, okay? It's over. I'm like the mafia cops. But the thing is, it made me, it had made me stronger. It made me adaptable. You have to adapt. Yet, what's the first word? To accept and adapt. We had a whole thing, and it don't mean anything, and it was adapt. Easily adapt to a situation. Like all of a sudden, if you got up and you pulled a gun on me, I would just have some kind of reaction, or I may just sit here and say, or you would say, shoot. It's made me stand up to a lot of people. I mean, after NAM, and what is anybody really going to do to me? I could have been killed like anyone. I was in danger. You asked me if I was ever hurt. I didn't get the Purple Heart, but as I told you, that fella, that time that I turned away, he did stab me, get me in the shoulder. Had I not turned, the guy not yelled, he would have had my heart. I would have been dead. But I didn't. I'm sorry I didn't get 4 Purple Hearts in a couple of months, but like Senator did. But and I never got a Purple Heart, and I didn't ask for it. I wasn't looking for medals. I don't like the auxiliary, which pleads. It's a very important organization, and I noticed because you have, on your site, on your website, they're so important to what's going on out here and to Homeland Security. They're part of it. They're our watchdog. There's a lot of eyes out there, and the thing is, it's changed me that I'm going to go on. I take that next step, and I also have compassion. Yet you would think that maybe when I was younger, I was very quick with my fist. If somebody didn't looked at me wrong, I'd be a tough guy. I'm not. But when I get into court, I advocate as hard as I can, because I feel like I'm fighting for somebody's life, and many times I am. One day in jail, you could be killed. It's not, you don't hear about it, but people die every day in jail or killed. And it's a horrible thing, and especially the clients I have. So I feel like I'm still fighting. I feel like I'm still at war in another capacity, And I'm not quite sure, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I told you I had PTSD, I get help for that. I have people to advise, hey, do this, Frank. When you feel like you want to, don't. Pull back, do this. I can't tell you, there have been times I've wanted to use my hands, and I stopped. And I think that, NEM made me a better person. I just miss a lot of people, a lot of friends, and I'm very sorry to the Vietnamese people. I didn't mean to do some of the things that we did, that I did. And that's nothing that I can cure. It's something that hurts. And a lot of people, maybe they ask me what's wrong, and I don't tell them. Oh, I came out of the closet in '86 about being a Vietnam veteran, very quickly in law school. I don't know why in the criminal law book, they had Lieutenant Calley case in the criminal law book. And I'm sitting there quiet, I didn't say a word, and they're saying Hitler, killers, the whole squad should have been killed, and that it should be murdered in a ditch just like the babies and everything. And all I know is that I went berserk, and I took the class over for an hour and a half, and I explained it. I said, I do remember my first words. I said, I threw my chair back and I said, this was combat Vietnam. And I remember, but I know that the women were crying after that, and they said they're so sorry that they didn't know anything about it. And not Hollywood, not to bring Hollywood into this, and I don't like the Hollywood films, I'll finish. Okay? I know you, if you,
He just has to lock him up.
okay, so, okay, I'll wrap it up with one thing. I feel that I don't like particularly watching any war pictures. Well, John Wayne, you can't help, the Westerns, but okay, but the thing is, except the first 20 minutes, I said 20 minutes, Spielberg had somebody, people who were there, because the first 20 minutes, to me, that was of Saving Private Ryan. Just the 20 minutes, then it became, to me, Hollywood. A girl wanted to see Rambo, so I mean, I was laughing. It didn't bother me at all, except one thing at the end, and I'm finished. There is something, everybody's did make fun of Rambo. I understand, it's Hollywood. Bullshit. Rambo, bull. I was hiding. I ducked. I'm not a hero. I'm a coward. I wanted to live. I wanted to come home in one piece. But Rambo, he said to him, his colonel said to him, "What do you want, John? What are you looking for?" And he turned around. And I think a lot of Vietnam veterans missed the one good line in a Rambo movie, and that is, he said, all I want is what every other guy who came here and spilled his guts out. I want our country to love us as much as we loved it. As much as we love it. And that's what I'd like to see. And I think that's a good line. And I'll end with that.
Thank you.